Learn to improve conversions and generate more leads with the video podcast at marketingoptimization.tv.
Welcome to the Marketing Optimization Podcast with Alex Designs. I'm your host, Alex Harris, and today we're chatting with Larry Marine from intuitivedesign.com. How are you doing, Larry?
I'm doing well, thanks.
To get started, what is your definition of optimization and why is it beneficial?
Well, user experience and optimization work hand in hand, and ideally optimization is trying to get people to do things, and UX is all about managing user expectations and behaviors. So the idea is to manage the users to get them to buy something.
It's really not that hard to just put up a kind of pretty website anymore, but it is hard to understand what the user really wants and get it to convert.
Right. A lot of times people come at it from a development or a graphic design, and like you said, they try to put up pretty pictures. And that's all well and good, and pretty pictures do help sell. But if you look at the psychology of the user and try to react to that, then you're going to add yet another arrow to your quiver.
And can you just give us your perspective on UX focused on conversion optimization?
Well, a lot of, like I said, a lot of companies have pretty websites, but what they don't understand is why the user is there. What is the knowledge basis of that particular user? What trigger got them there? What's their desired outcome? And a lot of websites basically are nothing more than brochures, depending on the user or relying on the users to actually read everything about their products or services and then determine whether or not they want to buy something. And in reality, when users visit websites, the first thing that they're trying to do is understand what's the breadth of this problem, what don't I already know? And it's not so much read about the solutions, but try to understand the problem more. And that's where a lot of companies fail in their website design.
Yeah, let's briefly just go into that research, understanding what those triggers are. I actually worked for a diet and fitness company for 11 years, so we did a lot of research at this. When someone wants to go on a diet, obviously there's a trigger that happens. Maybe it's a woman who is about to go to her son's wedding, or it's a man who's wants to get fit for a CrossFit championship. But there's some trigger that happens to make them to go to Google and type in some type of query. And then they get to a landing page or experience. That's where the user experience kicks in?
That's right, because the idea with user experience is you want to engage the customer. The visitor has to have some relationship with your company. If all you have are pages and pages of brochureware that you're expecting the user to read, that's not connecting with them. But if you can have a question up there, class reunion coming up, that's the problem they're facing. That's the trigger that got them there. Right. So good user experience design begins with user research to understand what is the user's perception of the problem, not what is the company's perception of the solution.
Any tips to get the best user research, whether it's tools or tactics?
Tactics. The best way to do user research is observational research. Surveys, journals, day in the life, all of those kinds of things, interviews, those suffer from a self-reporting bias. And customers typically don't know what to tell you because sometimes what they think is their fault is really the fault of the website, and so they're not going to mention it because they don't want to look stupid. But if you do observational research where you take a step back and objectively look at the problem domain and try to get a feeling for what is going on in that person's head, what things are they looking at? So like if you watch somebody do a search, you find out that there's a specific search pattern that most of us engage in. When we get involved in a domain we're unfamiliar with, the first thing is we start with a few keywords, and then we start expanding our search. And that expansion comes from keywords or terms or ideas that we get back from the initial search results. So our search is iterative. And so what we're doing is we're learning. And once we get a feel for how broad the domain is, then we start narrowing down to a few select choices. Most websites don't accommodate that type of search behavior.
Yeah, the results are almost more important than the query you put in, how you present the results, getting people to take the right action. So let's talk about that. I was actually going through your website and I see how you present UX problems. You go through the process of design objective analysis, we briefly spoke about that, and then you do the user research, and then you have task analysis and optimization. Give us a little bit of understanding about that task analysis.
when you watch somebody do something, you realize there's a certain set of steps that everybody's doing, some common flow, if you will. And you basically map that out. What are the steps? What's the triggers, the desired outcome, and the steps in between? What tools are they using? What knowledge are they gaining? What artifacts are they bringing into this problem? And once you have a diagram of all of the steps of the task, then you can start to look at it and say, how can we reduce the reliance on the user and use the system to provide knowledge that the user can benefit from? So when you think about it, websites aren't product companies, they're knowledge companies. They have more knowledge about their products than the users do. They have more knowledge about best practices and things like that. So the idea behind a good website is, if you do the task analysis, you find ways to inject that company knowledge into the flow so that you no longer rely on the users to have that knowledge. You present that to them. A good example of that is the ProFlowers website, which we designed a long time ago. But it's still there. It's the same website because it works. And what we did was we did observational analysis going into flower shops and watching guys buy flowers. And they walk up to the display case and they say, I need flowers. And the clerk says, why do you need the flowers? Not what flowers do you need, but why do you need the flowers? Oh, well, I forgot my wife's birthday. Ah, well, then you need this bouquet here. Well, when you look at the ProFlowers website, we did that task analysis, and the optimization was people don't know what flowers, but they know what occasion. So ProFlowers is organized around occasions, not flowers. Right, and so the user just needs to know their occasion, and then they see all these bouquets that are appropriate, and like, how sorry are you? $39.99, $59.99, or $79.99 sorry?
Well, let's maybe, I know ProFlowers has, it's been known to be one of the most popular to have, a huge conversion rate. Is there something that we could think about for smaller businesses, smaller maybe e-commerce businesses, that they can take those same concepts and apply it to their own conversion rate optimization?
A good example of that is the kbb.com website. I worked with them for about a half a day, just giving them some ideas. And, Kelley Blue Book is basically a repository of, what price vehicles should sell for or what you should buy them for. And what we discovered in our early analysis was that people go there with just a few select questions that they're trying to answer. What's my car worth? What should I pay for a used car? What should I pay for a new car? And so when you go to the KBB website, you see that there's 3 buttons there on the left, right? And it asks those 3 questions. Mm-hmm. You click on it and you start going down a path to answer it. Whereas before, what they had was all of these data sheets, if you will, about pricing, and you had to figure out, location, mileage, and all this. This does that for you now. Mm-hmm. It becomes an agent for the user instead of a tool that relies on the user to know how to use.
So those type of functional, interactive experiences that people bring in, what I found, because I, marketing to natural search versus paid search versus social media, all these different segments, they act differently to different interfaces. And I think the one you mentioned, the Kelley Blue Book one, where you come in, you have like an interactive, drop-down element, and you kind of get a result from that. I've seen that work really well for pay-per-click advertising, but not necessarily maybe as good for something in natural search. Have you seen the same thing?
It's interesting. If you can reorient your content, whether it be, search or optimization or conversion, whatever you want to call it, if you reorient the content so that it is coming from the user's perspective,
right,
they're engaged and they feel like you're working with them as opposed to relying them to do all the work. And so instead of presenting solutions, what you should do is start by helping the customer identify what their problem is.
Right.
And once they understand that their problem, they're more willing to continue the adventure on your website.
I think that's a great perspective, because I know that users are more advanced these days, and they will give you that feedback. So, through your experience, you want to make sure that you're collecting that qualitative feedback along the way, whether it's, OLARC or live chat or whatever it is. Because in those experiences, if it doesn't meet the user's needs at that point, then it's not achieving those objectives.
Right, and then they're gone. They're going to look for another solution. So the sooner you can connect with their perception of their problem, the more likely they're going to stay on your site.
Yeah. And I wanted to kind of give the audience, maybe some specific tips for improving conversion, through user experience. And we kind of touched on that, but are there any maybe 3 specific examples that we can, maybe some problems that most sites have that can be improved through user experience?
The number one problem that most websites have is they're a reflection of how the company sees themselves, not how the customer is trying to understand their problem. So the first thing that you want to do is do some research and find out what are the main customer problems that people are trying to solve by coming to your site.
Right.
And then orient your content. Second step is to orient your content around the problems, not the solutions. So it's a stepwise progression when people interact with a website or a mobile app or something, that the first thing they want to do is make sure, is this the right place for me? Is this going to help me? And so by connecting with them through their representation or understanding of their problem, you've taken that first step. Once they trust that you know their problem, then they're willing to go to the next step, and that's where you start laying out the task flow for answering or addressing that problem. Now, what's interesting, another common problem that a lot of websites have is that they have objects or content throughout the website, and that content exists in one and only one place on a website. The trouble with that is that sometimes customers need the same content in different places for different problems.
Right.
So you may have content X in step 3 of one problem, but it may be step 7 of another problem. It's okay to replicate that content in that task flow. Yeah. Don't expect the users to know how your site is laid out and then to be able to navigate to find the appropriate content. Lay things out in a task flow for them. So those are the 3 things. Number 1, understand the user's problem. Number 2, have a stepwise progression that flows through that. Number 3, don't relegate a piece of content or an object into just one place. Put it in where it fits in every task flow.
That's a good point, because in e-commerce, we try to make sure that we answer all the top FAQs on a particular product. People, if you're selling health and fitness supplements, people can be concerned about the quality of the ingredients. So you want to make sure you answer all those questions. But a lot of times, e-commerce sites, they hide that information in one area of their site, and they expect the user to go and find it.
Exactly.
But on the product page, make it obvious. Oh, these are the ingredients. This is how fast it ships. This is our return policy. Be able to answer all those questions that people have. And doing that user research to find out what those questions are is really the key.
That's right.
Very interesting stuff. And as I've been building out user experiences, I've done, the information architecture to find the right tasks. And I've put together what I call the ideal map, the ideal user experience to get them from, search to conversion and so forth along the way. Are you kind of doing that with your clients too, to bring them through these ideal stream paths to actually convert them?
We call them best practice paths, yes.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we try to do with our clients. Because oftentimes the clients have never done that before, and so they've never optimized each individual task flow. What they have is just a general website, and they're expecting the users to go find all the objects that they need. And the users aren't very good at that.
Yeah, I find this really interesting, because when I tell people what I do who run small businesses, I tell them I help them convert their existing traffic. So usually we can see where those traffic patterns go throughout your site. Usually there's an 80-20. You're making 80% of your traffic off of 20% of your pages, and then that's filtering down through the funnel. And you can go through and identify where some of those drop-off problems are, and maybe what the triggers are of why or why not they're actually converting. So it's very interesting how user experience has really grown.
And you know what? You just reminded me of something I wanted to mention, and that is that user experience comes in 2 flavors. One is to take what you've got and optimize it, which is optimization. And the other is to take a look at what you've got from a fresh perspective and start from scratch. And we do both. Oftentimes, most websites tend to solve the wrong problem, albeit very well, but still it's the wrong problem. Like Pro Flowers, for instance. They initially thought that they needed to put up a host of flowers and you get the user to build bouquets. Well, there were about 1,200 online florists at the time when we were designing Pro Flowers, and they all did that. And they were all selling roses because that's all men knew. So when we really investigated the problem, we found out that what we needed to do instead was to organize it by the occasion, and then we put bouquets in each occasion. So by clearly redefining the problem, you can change the whole UX and the whole structure of your company and your website. We've done that for FedEx. There's so many, conferencecall.com, all these kinds of companies. And what we found in over 250 projects is every website is solving the wrong problem initially.
Yeah.
So even if you just do optimization, you're just putting lipstick on a pig.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing. You realize after you've optimized so much stuff for a period of time, you're going to reach that local maximum, and eventually you're going to run out of ideas. You're going to get diminishing returns, and you're going to need to do a redesign or segment your audience and present it in a different way. But what I'm hearing is, and it's interesting, I've heard people say this before, is the right type of intuitive design is the design that the person is using at that time, whatever experience that they're on, mobile, iPad, and browser.
That's right. And you know what? When you look at it, people use a browser, an iPad, and an iPhone differently and in different situations. Mm-hmm. So when you're at a browser, you're comfortable sitting there for an hour or so, doing search. When you're on an iPad, you may be in a coffee shop and you don't have all of your tools with you, and you have a casual interest and you're spending a little bit of time playing with it. When you're on your phone, it's much more immediate.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a solution right now.
Yeah. We get feedback on my e-commerce clients all the time about the mobile experience and the iPad experience. It's hard to get people to purchase on mobile. It's a lot harder. So we tend to make the number one goal on our mobile experiences lead generation, because we want people to collect the lead. The loyal customers don't like that, so we'll find ways to remove returning visitors from getting that same experience. So you want to make sure that you're talking to your audience and getting that feedback from them, because you may not even know how you may be upsetting your customers.
Right, and so if you just watch people use your apps in different situations, you'll get a much better perspective on, what they're going through and what their perspective is, what problems they're trying to solve, whether they're walking down the sidewalk, sitting in a coffee shop, or at their desk.
Excellent. Well, let's hear a little bit about you. Right now, if you're listening to this and you're not watching it on video, Larry is sitting outside in a beautiful view of Colorado with the mountains behind him.
Yeah, that's Pikes Peak behind me.
Really? Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you do, how people can find out more about you.
Well, sadly, I tend to throw people towards my website, but it's stale. It's about almost 8 years old now, and I need to redo it. But most times people find me at conferences and through podcasts, and I blog here and there. But I came from Dr. Don Norman's cognitive science program at UC San Diego.
Oh, wow.
Now, a lot of people don't know Don Norman, but he is the Norman of the Nielsen-Norman group. So Jacob Nielsen and Don Norman started that. And Don Norman was instrumental in the user experience of Apple. He was actually a vice president of Apple at one time. So the process that he's used is what I've used. I learned it from him, and I've been practicing this for about 25 years. The same process is still in place. We've, morphed it into something a little more usable by folks like yourself. And, I consult for different clients on different things. It's not just websites. It's software. It's a lot of medical devices. And, this whole thing about understanding what the user's perception of their problem is, it goes beyond just websites. I mean, you could turn it, add this to your product as well. So, look me up. Do a Google search on Larry Marine and find the blogs. I've been on Momentology lately. I've got another blog coming out there. And I was on Search Engine Watch for about a year. And they tasked me with writing some pretty good blog articles. So hope you guys enjoy them.
To close out, Larry, what would be one thing that you would tell optimizers to do to really, take their user experience and focus on conversion to that next level?
A lot of times user experience is done at the end of a development cycle. And it needs to be done before you go to development. You have to have a clear idea of what user experience objective you're trying to solve. And then you design some, early pages and then go into development. So move your user experience from the end of the process to the beginning of the process.
Thanks a lot for your time, Larry.
Thank you. Good talking with you again, Alex.
Thank you for watching the Marketing Optimization Podcast with Alex Designs. Please remember to subscribe to all the videos in my YouTube channel. Thank you.